Greetings and salutations to all you folks out there. It is time for another tournament. It is going to be Legend of the Stars round 3 this time around. We've got one more round in December and then the finals towards the end of the month. This is going to be a really good segment, I think, because there are a lot of fantastic players that are coming out today. We've got two of them right here in front of us. Map is Tag Craftiest Maximus, and the two players are Turin Bar is Seraphim on the top left, and Paralon Cybrin on the bottom right. So, Tag Craftiest Maximus, of course, one of those maps that is a bit difficult to wrap your head around. You do have some reclaim out on the edges that you definitely need to go for early. Typically, the meta is to send your ACU to the opposing corner, yellow to bottom left, if you're wondering which way I'm flicking my mouse around on that. And then you're going to want land. A lot of land early, but do not neglect the fact that there are tons of mass extractors in the water around the outside edge that you will need to snag. And then air, of course, as in any game, is going to carry a bit of weight. So if we're looking at the initial builds, Turin is dropping 4 mass extractors, rushing the Hydra out with his third engineer, expanding into mass extractors and picking up a naval factory down there. Had a little bit of manual reclaim down on the tree clumps up on top, picking up the 2 mass extractors just outside the base, then going for an additional naval factory over to the right. Down on the south side, we've got a little bit of a different plan here. We've got 2 naval factories over to the right-hand edge from engineer number 3. Paralon has gone for a similar build of 4 mass extractors with 1 power generator rolling into the hydro, but he has gone second land instead of second air and is going for third air factory. So that's going to give him a few extra early units out on the field to play with. Maybe those Mantis will buy him a little advantage. We'll just have to wait a minute and see. So this Mantis, nope, sorry, that is a hunter. That hunter is going to try and snag the engineer that is inevitably up on the plateau, or more accurately, pick up the engineer as it's moving towards the expansion, but the hapless little son of a gun is going to get picked off right there by the Tham. Perfect answer from Turin Bar. That is going to knock that raiding party out. Lots of manual reclaim going down for Paralon, who is moving his ACU over to the left instead of to the north, as I typically see. So we'll have to see whether these ACUs end up in battle over on this edge of the map. It looks like that is going to be the case since Turin is moving towards the south, but that's going to make for a little bit of an interesting dynamic as the game moves on. Speaking of, that is a lot of land factories planned out there. Good gracious alive. That's going to be a total of 9, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes, land factories on the roll. And might seem like a bit much for how much mass he has at his disposal, but you'll notice that Paralon is going to come out 6 mass extractors ahead on the outside expansions in the water. That is going to be enough to run 3 land factories, no problem. You got 2 more in the base for 5, 6, 7, and then a little reclaim to pick up the other 2. So that is actually a relatively well-balanced build. No worries at all to be had in that, and just goes to show you never want to underestimate the amounts of land factories that you can build. Otherwise, you might get knocked out of the game early by some T1 spam. Bomber headed out for Turin. That is a good pickup on your early air factory, and it does appear that since this scout pinged across Paralon's base, he has decided to go for a T1 mobile anti-air that is just having some horrible difficulties getting out of the base due to that bumper car pathfinding that Subcom appears to be so fond of. Bomber is going to be able to pick up the engineer that was expanding towards the north. That is going to slow down things quite substantially, and it's going to ping right across here to grab the other engineer. But no, perfect dodge out of the way by that NG, and then the 2 mobile anti-airs should be able to pick it up. As long as he can dodge that thing around a little bit more, he should be all right. And pass number 2, total miss, as we get our first little bit of engagement up on the top right. That's going to be an Inti, plus a couple of mobile anti-air shots, and that bomber is going to drop like a stone out of the sky. Oddly enough, was that a bomb or was that the air wreck? That was a bomb. You gotta have one last bomb to take out that mole there. Not exactly the most valuable unit, but hey, if you're losing the bomber anyway, might as well use that potential DPS to your advantage. Appreciate the host, Bike Rush. Thank you very, very much, my man. This group of 3 Mantis has caused a lot of grief for Turin. Killed off a couple of units here, the Expansion Engineer, 1 Mass Extractor, but he is going to come in with 4 Thams, outnumbering it ever so slightly. That'll clean up the mess and hopefully free Turin up to move to the right. So what you'll notice here is that Paralon has succeeded in claiming the entire southern portion of the map, is moving his ACU into a position to guard, cut off the flow of units to Turin's ACU so that he cannot effectively push. And map control is currently sitting about 40% in the hands of Paralon and only 20 to 30% map control for Turin. So this is definitely a back foot start for him, though his score is high enough to indicate that he should still stand a chance on this early game rollout. One thing to bear in mind is that Paralon, though he be only 1500 global rated, he plays a lot of ladder, so his 1v1 rating is closer to 1900. He is not far off of Turin, so if you're underestimating how good his performance can be, it's probably not what you think it is. Turin's going to move his ACU in for a bit of aggression here. I know that he sees the ACU. He had an air scout over the commander just a few moments ago, but I don't know that he realizes exactly how many units are being brought to bear right now. Coming face to face with the ACU, will have to make a choice, and he is going to choose to run back. The units in the immediate vicinity are not a huge danger. He will be able to get away from them, but if he gets his ACU caught up in the pathfinding and more of these trickle in from the back, that could spell quite a bit of danger for that ACU. You can see the Mantis movement around the outside edge. Shift G order coming in right behind the ACU to try and trip up that pathfinding, but Turin is going to be able to swing out wide and get around that. Paralon in a last-ditch effort trying to bungle up the walk of that ACU, but that's just going to put them both in the water and leave land control firmly in the grasp of Paralon. You'll notice he's got all 9 of his land factories ripping Mantis out right, left, and center. And meanwhile, on the other side of the map, we've ramped up to a total of 10 land factories with 13 plans. No Navy in the water on the top edge for Paralon, and he has gotten himself locked out on the south side. Well, no, Turin is not ground firing his frigate properly, so he may still get the sub out before that goes down. But for the most part, Paralon has gone all in on the land game in hopes of suppressing Turin's eco on the landmass. Later on in the game, it can be survivable to play along the outside edge, but early on, you have got to have this initial base of operations. ACU is going to move in towards the home base. Definitely don't want to risk that son of a gun too far in, because that is very easy to get swarmed out. But it looks like he will try to go, no, he's going to back off of that. He was going to try to go for the Navy, perhaps to move around the outside edge and edge build a PD. Not entirely sure what his reasoning was there, but he's going to have to drag all of his units up to the commander to keep that thing safe. There are more than enough units to kill the ACU grouped up on the south side of Turin's production line. Turin is going to risk edging out with the ACU to pick up a couple of Mantis kills there. Anything you can soak with the ACU is a help in a situation like this, because you will provide not only the 100 DPS to knock off tanks, but you've also got that, well, 11.5k in the case of Seraphim, or about 10k in the case of Cybran. Your ACU should be damage sponging for a lot of your more fragile little units. Let's go ahead and set focus army. We're going to go to 0. It should give us Turin. There we go. He's running 59 mass per tick on 660 mass income, desperately needing a bit of reclaim as he's 26 mass stalled at the moment, barely able to bring online enough units to, oh dear, this is worse than Xerxes, he calls out. Barely able to bring online enough units to stave off that push from Paralon. That will, though, give him an opportunity to snap up some of this reclaim and fuel his low mass factories. Let's go ahead and hit Sec Focus Army to 1, looking at Paralon. Bit ahead on the mass income, 71 per tick, also benefiting from a glorious level of reclaim, ahead on power by about 300 points and looking fantastic on his map control. But you notice on the outside edge, Paralon is down, swarmed by Turin's units. I just about completely missed that, but you saw it, Turin poking out of the water just in time to be able to snag that ACU kill with Paralon overextended. That was a throw if ever I have seen one. Good gracious. So Paralon caught out on the front edge, shredded down to about half HP, and I was exactly right. So he ended up losing a good portion of his force due to them being clumped up around his ACU. The Zooey fire was absolutely murderous. And then he had a break in the flow of his units due to having sent all... wow, Paralon, no. He stood still and then walked straight under the Zooey fire. Just got obliterated by the sheer DPS there. Holy cow. So if he had not moved his units to the north and paused over here, if he'd had all of these units with his commander, he probably wouldn't have died. And if he had done things the way that he did, but had not sat still with his ACU and taken an entire volley of Zooey fire and then another volley on retreating, he probably would have been okay and won that game. That was snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. That looks like a play that I would do. Well attempted by Paralon. Well played at Turin Bar, staying in that all the way through to the end and then snagging that kill. Good game all the way around. For this matchup, we're going to bump up into round 2 of the winner's bracket. We've got Keyser on the left and Ajax on the right. Both of them Cybern, both of them equally skilled players. This should be an excellent matchup. Let's go ahead and pay attention to the early builds because it does matter. On any map for sure, but definitely on smaller landlocked maps, it matters a whole lot. If we can glean any good information from these build orders, it'll put us ahead of all of our competition. Hands down. That's what we're all here for, right? To learn from the masters. Well, Keyser's dropping Land Factory first. We got 2 power generators, 2 mass extractors, probably additional power generators once he gets around to queuing up, since he is a lazy son of a gun and wasting the entire first 30 seconds of the game queuing nothing. I'm halfway expecting to see some chat pop up on the side, some nonsense that he's been doing for the last little bit, but no, he is just going to queue things as they come out, I suppose. So that is where we'll leave him. If we take a look at the other side, Ajax, on the other hand, has queued up a vast amount of things. He is going first land, lots of power generators. He went 1 power generator after the mass extractor, and then 2 more mass extractors rolling into more power generators, so there's no way that he's going air factory off of that. Unless, of course, you think about the fact that he is reclaiming tree clumps with a very valuable engineer. That is a good use of build power right there, so he might, in fact, be able to. But no, he is going to go Land Factory off of 3 power generators in what is probably one of the most power-optimized builds I've seen in a long time. Keyser, on the other side, dropping a handful of power generators. That is going to be 6 out of the normal 7 that you would require in an absolute minimum to run an air factory, and then he does not have a land factory queued as of yet. So both of these guys putting the early reclaim to use so that they can scrounge up from around their base in order to get units out on the field. Ajax, going for that 3rd air factory, is going to be a bit slower to the party than Keyser, who is building an assisted air factory right over here. And if you take a look at their power supply, it's actually looking quite good for him. So that base will come online, be fully operational in time to perhaps get out a T1 bomber to harass the other side. Ajax is spreading out with his counter to early aggression from the other side. He is going to be getting T1 land factories down around the hydro on the outside edge. Well timed on that, actually, because he is going to have to finish this other power generator and then build the air factory. Might experience a small amount of stall, but by the time the air factory actually comes on to run, he should have the Hydra available to him. +6 power on that. So either that was a very strategic pause of some resources, or that is a well-practiced, well-optimized build order that is eking every last iota of combat potential out of the initial storage. So that Hydro is going to come online. Air Factory shortly to follow when we see the score skyrocket as Ajax fully exploits his bars of resources. Look at that balance. Keyser on the other side looking a bit similar. He's rolling out his third land factory right now and building his Hydro with 2 engineers on the front line while he walks his ACU roughly towards the center. I love how he just picked up a random swath of manual reclaim through the rocks as he sends his engineer on to get more mass extractors. This is something that I could definitely straighten out about my own play, because when I do this thing, I typically attack, move an engineer there, and forget about him, and that is wasted potential build power. So you can suck up all that mass on your way to boost up your early build, but then not lose the expansion potential of that engineer, instead sending it on after getting only the mass that you need. Actually, now that I look at it, this may be a different version of the map than is on ladder, because that seems like far less reclaim. My goodness, those are some flat rock textures there. Far less reclaim than I remember there being on this map from my previous goes. I don't know. That is a question to be answered another day. Keyser coming out ever so slightly ahead on that combat. Very far ahead with the 2 versus 1 over here with those Mantis. That is going to free this Mantis up to potentially snag another kill on an engineer and definitely prevent the death of this poor hapless bastard on the north side. He is going to have to get more combat units over to the right in order to prevent things from going pop. Even a handful of ticks on reclaim would see the death of that Mantis at the hand of an engineer. But it did serve its purpose, and Keyser is free to claim those mass extractors. Out here in the middle of the map, there's not particularly much to fight over. There is some 5 mass rocks, I suppose I should say, if I were to English properly. Those are worth getting, but they're not worth dying over. So don't stress your early build order too much in an attempt to get those before you should be in the center. Got a little miss here. Mantis moving up to the back end of the base. There should be more than enough combat potential rolling out of the base to snag that before it does any serious damage. But optimistically, this could kill an engineer, so definitely worth pushing in for the run by. Mantis getting shredded down to exceptionally low health, but we are going to see that, oh my goodness, that 22 HP Mantis from before is going to remain alive due to the sacrifice of his brother in arms, and he is going to claim his 3rd kill. That is kind of unusual, honestly, to see a T1 unit with that many kills under its belt. Mantis chose the wrong direction to go on that, came in contact with 2 enemy tanks and was obliterated accordingly. And on the southern edge, Keyser definitely doing a better job of keeping his units clumped up. This is where you've got the typical thing that I always comment on, streaming units versus clumped units. You know which one of these is going to win. When you have 1 tank come into the firing range of 3 tanks 3 times, it is definitely going to die without dishing out its potential damage. That is a very well-placed point defense indeed. Not even any wall sections around it, though that may be more the fault of the engineer dying than anything else. That is going to effectively prevent run-bys on the right side of the northern edge, and also generate a little bit of reclaim, so that point defense over time might even pay for itself. More Mantis engagements on the southern edge. Unfortunately, an engineer caught in the crossfire that is going to be eliminated with extreme prejudice, all of the hateful racism towards the engineer kind that T1 tanks can summon. And then we were going to have a retraction. That looked like it might have been a run-by, but I think with the land scout radar coverage that Ajax had, probably would not have been particularly successful. Ajax should definitely lay in a T1 radar down here, I feel like. I'm becoming more of a fan of T1 radars as time goes on. I know that I am a bit late to the party, 6 years playing FAF and thousands upon thousands of games under my belt, and I'm just now learning to fully appreciate the potential of intel on your gameplay. But now that I've discovered it, I am always encouraging people to just build it randomly on the outside edges. That 20 power is nothing in the face of predicting exactly where your enemy's units are going to be coming from. Ajax swarming out the divided units of Keyser. Definitely going to come ahead on this engagement. That's also going to free him up to reclaim this field of mass on the south side. In return, Keyser has not taken the top right. So though the differential in map control is not particularly high, only 2 or 3 mass, well, not mass, 2 or 3 mass extractors difference, Keyser is definitely getting hurt very badly by the loss in reclaim potential. A hoplite has hit the field though. Keyser fielding T2 in an effort to eliminate those T1 units from range with some excellent kiting. As soon as Ajax saw that his opponent had gone for T2, he is going to drop that HQ himself. Taking a look at what has been scouted on the other side, Ajax has very good intel. He's been making use of his scouts, making use of his units, and he has just about everything on the map tagged. Keyser is not doing quite so well of a job, but he does have recent enough intel that he should know that there are 2 T2 mass extractors on Ajax's side of the map. This is what Reclaim does for you. When you get more of it, you get not only an equivalent or greater number of tanks, you also get mass extractors out of the deal, which is a very happy circumstance for anyone to be in, unless they are your opponent. The biggest problem right now is going to be stopping these hoplites, because as they increase in number, they get stronger and stronger. I don't know that hoplites actually have AoE damage. They do have scatter damage to a certain degree. I think it is, it's kind of similar to Corsair missiles, honestly, but they do appear to be seeking the targets rather well. As you get more of them, they're able to alpha strike and remove damage potential from your tank forces with extreme ease as they run away on their nimble little legs to where you cannot reach them. And you either need mass T1 bombers to deal with them, or you need to go T2 yourself and try to counterbalance it with stealth in your forces and hoplites of your own. So as these hoplites move up on the edge, you'll notice that the Mantis are just falling one after the other over here, and finally, Keyser will be able to reclaim that mass field. Aha, that means 2 things. Mantis in the base is never a good situation to be in. Ajax, though, has been able to pop out a Rhino. That T2 tank should be more than a match for any number of Mantis that come in, as it can meet shield inside the buildings. And then we're going to see the production of a T2 engineer, which will drop in for T2 power, as well as some hoplites to counter the enemy. So while Keyser has made a bit of a short-term gain, he is going to be hard-pressed to stop these units. That is one of the disadvantages of hoplites versus mainline tanks. As long as you're being aggressive, all is good in the world. As soon as you get put on your back foot in a defensive posture, hoplites have to continually retreat. They cannot tank damage. So you end up in the situation where you continually lose map control as you kill enemy units, losing mass extractors, potentially radar, and other valuable things on the front line. Eventually you'll win. But the problem is that by that time, you've sustained enough damage and lost enough ground that your opponent may still come out ahead. This is a very serious hole in Keyser's defenses on the south side. He does see it coming. There is radar down there that will die, of course, as the hoplites move in to intercept. But that is going to leave Ajax free to probe into the south side with a rather strong force of mixed T1 and T2. He just about missed the opportunity to move those hoplites out of the way, a fourth joining the raiding party, but he will snag them just in time to prevent the untimely death of the forward unit as those kite back and forth in an effort to stave off the intrusion. So we're going to see a few Mantis over in this direction. Looks like a full-on retreat over to this edge to wipe out the opposing units on that side. I'm actually kind of curious. I don't know if T1 point defense outranges hoplites specifically. Let's take a look at this. I cannot see the unit information on there, so let's take a look at this. Hoplite has a range of 37, and then if we switch over to Ajax's view, the T1 point defense also does not have the marker, but we should be able to see it there. 26 range on the T1 point defense. So hoplites can actually replace your T1 artillery in your unit mix, and they'll be able to wipe out those T1 point defense with ease and precision. Actually, much more precision than Medusas typically would, because Medusas, as we all know, have terrible, blatantly terrible firing accuracy. One Medusa takes an eternity to kill a T1 point defense due to it missing constantly. You actually need a fairly substantial number of Medusas in your mix to eliminate those things in a timely fashion. Hoplites moving up, still 100% hoplite production for Keyser, which means he is all alpha with no sticking power. But Ajax appears to be matching with a very heavy hoplite mix as well, though he does have a few rhinos in the back end of his mix in order to try and give a little bit more staying power. Stealth, always a good thing to have with your hoplites. It prevents your opponent from seeing what is shooting missiles at them, forcing them to use air scouts or just overcommit in general and potentially lose those units. It's interesting to see that Ajax is not on the front line. He has decided that his ACU would be in too much danger up there, though I do not necessarily blame him for that, since there are approaching 20 hoplites on the field now. Those will kill an ACU very quickly indeed. So he's kind of chilling in the base, just using his ACU for a little bit of build power next to the even more build power. I guess a last line of defense so that his factories don't get taken offline, something like that. And Keyser is making a strong push through the middle, even as he loses his expeditionary force on the northern edge. So he may lose a couple of mass extractors up here, but look at the damage that he has done to Ajax. Unfortunately, Ajax, with those two T2 mass extractors in the base and the T2 power generator online, he is going to be able to sustain rather well. 39 mass versus 33. Let's go ahead and take a look at the reclaim numbers. We've got 4,300 for Keyser and 5,600 for Ajax, so a fairly substantial lead on that metric. More hoplites moving to the south. Keyser trying to keep Ajax at arm's reach as he reclaims with the T1 engineer over on that edge. I would love to see an additional engineer or two down there to see more mass coming in, because he is stalling quite hard. Ajax is as well. Both of these guys are spending 100% of their mass 100% of the time. Well, it introduces some difficulties because it is hard to get a unit quickly when you're that mass stalled. It is technically more efficient to run fewer factories, since when you're that negative, that means you've wasted mass on more build power that you didn't actually need. But as soon as either one of them bites into reclaim, that does give them the ability to spend all of their mass, and they will get those units to the field much more quickly than their opponents, potentially, if they had not done the same thing. Another group of 6 hoplites, note that is 7, Brink cannot count, moving towards the southern edge, which is guarded by 3 + 2 rhinos. I think this force would come out ahead with a small amount of micro, and Keyser is working to exercise map control. He has definitely recovered every bit of what he lost at the beginning of this game and has taken some in return, though not until after Ajax has already reclaimed most of what is valuable on this edge. I'm not sure why Keyser was not rushed there. He has an unupgraded ACU, and there are quite a substantial number of T2 units on this side. That ACU would be completely helpless, totally outranged, totally outdamaged if those pushed in, and his units were far out of position to the right side. I don't know that he realizes how much danger his ACU is in, but either way, the units are now moving to the south, and this is the dastardly deed that I was afraid would be happening. I told you just a few minutes ago that one of the ways to deal with mass hoplites was with a fleet of T1 bombers, and a fleet is exactly what Ajax has. Bear in mind that each of these bombers only costs less than 200 mass, I believe. Those bombers are costing out at 105 mass each, and hoplites, on the other hand, are going to cost a grand total of 200 mass. So if you have two T1 bombers that AoE two hoplites and kill them in one pass, they paid for themselves in mass, and then you can use your own land units to raid in. And as tightly packed as Keyser's units are, these bombers might potentially be able to wipe this entire rank and file in one pass, which would leave Ajax with a monumental unit advantage. But apparently he has gotten paranoid about the northern side and is trying to deal with that poking and prodding and forgot to micro his bombers on the southern edge. So there were a couple of losses on both sides here, but now we're going to see these bombers move in. T1 air scouts there. We're going to see a lot of attack orders go down, then a shift G command in all likelihood, unless of course Ajax forgot about it again. But it looks like he is going to move in. Interceptors moving up to take advantage of the turn that those inties are potentially going to make. Keys are fleeing towards the north as the bombers spread out for a torrential rainfall of damage, utterly wiping out about 6 Mongoose, a handful of T1 tanks, and a T2 tank all at once. Bombers moving into the base now, looking for build power to kill. No, they are looping to come back and hit the land forces once again. I thought I saw a couple of bombs drop, but apparently that was not the case. Now that these forces have been decimated, Ajax is going to move his own tanks in. Keyser not able to effectively micro both areas at once, so some of his units are sitting and stalling as he desperately attempts to guard this front edge of the base. He cannot afford an incursion at this point. His T2 power generator is rather precariously, there we go, that was the word I was looking for, precariously positioned at the southern edge of his base, susceptible to a whole lot of damage should those units come in. And now he is going to commit to an air fight after losing, no! The majority of his interceptor is going to pull out just too late to come back over his own flak, and is not going to be able to draw Ajax into that bait attempt over the flak. That was a really big mistake from Keyser, losing his air forces as he knows that Ajax has the potential to build bombers, and then also failing to retract his units on the northern side quickly enough to get out of reach of Ajax's tanks. So that is going to be a reversal again. Keyser had made so much progress over the last few minutes in map control and unit count, and in one fell swoop of bombers, he has lost that entire advantage and will likely lose the north side as well. Also, bear in mind that Ajax has replaced the hoplites in his forces with a huge count of rhinos. Those are extremely beefy, definitely will be picked off eventually by the hoplites, but remember, hoplites have to retreat in order to remain effective. So he is going to be giving up loads of ground as these rhinos advance, potentially doing some good raiding, eliminating all those mass extractors, and if Keyser is unlucky enough to misstep with his micro, wiping out the entirety of the hoplites in a matter of seconds, leaving Ajax free to eliminate the top edge. Keyser did get reclaim right next to his base. If we go and take a look, he's at 8,200, but Ajax at 91 is still ahead. So he has closed the gap slightly, but that is rapidly going to fall away now that Ajax has got access to this entire mass field on the right-hand side. I don't know what Keyser can actually do to fix this. It is doubtful that he can do anything, but he started to roll rhinos as opposed to hoplites. This is one of those situations that showcases the weakness of focusing only one specialty type of unit. It can come back to bite you in the buttocks if you get stuck in a position where you are not able to retreat, or you get rained on by T1 bombers. Those low HP units, while good on their own and able to hold their ground and potentially gain ground, they are paper in the face of a well-equipped counter-attacking force. Keyser has his ACU dangerously close to the front line, still completely unupgraded, especially considering the fact that he has a total loss of air control at the minute. He does have 3 mobile flak, 4 mobile flak in his force, so that is a good amount of protection to have near the commander, but I still would not be risking my ACU so freaking far up on the front this late into the game. I'm halfway expecting to see T3 from Ajax at some point. He does have 57 mass income, which is not a huge amount, but he could have, with all of the reclaim that he got, funded a T3 HQ and then started pumping out perhaps Loyalists. The rating would be nice on Loyalists, but I would honestly go for Bricks at this point because most of the units are now mainline combat, and Bricks are just so incredibly strong versus T1 and T2. They've also got a bit of reach to get out at the hoplites a bit better, but with the speed differential, we're not really going to talk too much about that. Keyser clumping up his units once again. That is a very fit fighting force, but I think he's going to have a bit of an issue in his base in a moment. He does not have any radar coverage on this and is so moving all of his combat units to the southern edge where they're not going to be able to help in any kind of quick fashion. Keyser now has these on radar. The question is, how well will he react? We see a few T2 units moving back up towards the north as we get an engagement over on the right side. That is going to be an utter wipe for Keyser. And he may be able, no. He is still producing an inordinate amount of hoplites, and you see how quickly those hoplites melt in the face of rhinos. They just disintegrate. 3 rhinos moving up from the back, and then we've got a few hoplites that should be hiding in the factories in order to prevent their loss. But I think that was a T2 mass extractor that is now gone. Let's see, that is 1 in the center, 3 around. And that is 1 in the center, 3 large around. That was definitely a T2 that just got wiped out. That is a rather difficult punch in the face to take when you're in the precarious position that Keyser is in. You'll look, the mass income, huge discrepancy. Ajax is literally making twice the mass that Keyser is. He has got superior map control at this point, and I think he may have enough of a unit death ball online to be able to just roll through the base. A lot of this is coming in due to the fact that he has gone T2 mass extractors on all of his relatively protected edges, and also has full T2 in his base. So even if he loses a lot of the T1s on the outside, it's not that big of a deal, and he is rebuilding them. So he's got a fair amount of mass on his outside edges. Keyser, on the other hand, totally dependent upon keeping all of the T1 mass extractors and as much reclaim as possible in order to get the mass online to do anything at all. I'm honestly surprised that Ajax has not moved to either T2 air or T3 land. I was commenting on T3 land a minute ago, but T2 air would also be an excellent option. Oh no, another T2 mass extractor going down, and the means of production shall be seized. At least everything on the outside of the base anyway. Keyser's still out alone with his commander in a totally snipeable position. At this point, even jesters would be sufficient to take that ACU offline, and we do know that Ajax has the mass for that, but he is just continuing to build air as Keyser has, for the most part, abandoned that. He is building out of 1 air factory, unassisted, so he is getting interceptors up to, push back against any kind of incursion that might happen, but he's mostly depending on the flak in his forces to actually keep him protected. Nice pincer maneuver on some stranded units here. Ajax picking up those kills and generating a bit more reclaim for himself should he be able to get engineers up into that zone. As we get additional T2 tanks, the rating is so strong on this. Keyser playing very well towards the beginning of the game, but the longer this goes on, the more it looks like Ajax is slowly but surely strangling the map to death He doesn't have a massive lead in any particular category. There is the T2 Air Factory, finally. But he does have a few nice toys that Keyser doesn't have. The T2 ACU for one, that is a nice shout. T2 Air Factory, that is another. And a couple of T2 Mass Extractors, all excellent things. Hoplite's still very strong in the mix, but at least we do have a front force of Rhinos. Keyser, now that he has all of his units in the same place, will be able to stave off the attack force of Ajax on that edge. I think Ajax's tank deficit, looking at the incomes, Ajax should have far more combat units than he does, but I think he's reinvesting mass at the moment into storages in order to pump up his income over on the right. I would not doubt that there will be T3 soon. He's probably going to finish capping and then drop a T3 if the game continues to move on at that point. But since we started seeing Corsair production, and the air is all going to die with almost not a single loss on Ajax's side, that is going to open Keyser up for some really aggressive air snipages. Of course, with the flak moving up to protect the ACU, it will take some doing to actually kill the thing, but it is not entirely outside the realm of possibility that we'll have an ACU death inside of 2 minutes. Let's go ahead and take a look at the reclaim numbers. Once again, Keyser at 21k, Ajax at 13k. That does explain where Keyser has gotten all of these units, as he's reclaimed the entire left-hand side. That is a massive jump from before. 10,000 mass income. If we divide that out, I'm actually, while we're seeing this little standoff, I'm gonna Keyser was running what, a 50 mass advantage? So 10,000 divided by 50 divided by 60 for minutes. That is actually, if I did my math right, and I did, no, 10,000 divided by 8. That is 3 minutes and 33 seconds of income for Ajax. So at this point in the game, that's kind of how you figure out whether your reclaim is shoring up your defenses or not. With that 50 mass advantage, after 3.5 minutes, Ajax is still ahead in mass. And he has still a 50 mass advantage, even though both of these guys have come up a little bit. So let's call it 4 minutes. Keyser has bought himself 4 minutes of time versus the enemy's superior economy with that reclaim, and then he will start falling behind again. The classic 100 second equals 1 minute scale. What? That's not what I did. 10,000 divided by 50 divided by 60 seconds. Did I say something different? I probably said something different, but my number is correct, I assure you. It's 3.33 minutes. So that does explain why we've had a standoff for so long, with Keyser seemingly able to maintain versus the vastly superior income. But the longer this game goes on, the more slim that lead is going to be, unless he can maintain that kind of differential in reclaim. Corsairs coming in to lay in some damage. Would be marvelous to see the flak sniped out of this, but it looks like those Corsairs are going for hoplites potentially. Either that or the flak was being microed individually by Keyser. Actually, I think that's what was going on. And so the flak is dodging the shots and shooting down the Corsairs. But the longer that Corsair production goes on, we're up to 6 now, the more likely it is that this ACU gets one pop sniped. And then especially if, let's say, a land assault came in versus Keyser's ACU and was able to kill off most of the land units and therefore flak next to that commander, well then, that could end very badly indeed. That ACU is going to wade in perhaps a bit too far, overcharging a Rhino and a Hoplite in one shot before laying in a bit of base damage against a Rhino on the other side. That is going to push away Ajax's forces for now, but I think we're starting to see that mass discrepancy where there's more T2 units on this edge than there are on the left. So we're looking at a ticking clock here as T3 comes online for Ajax. As anticipated, he got most of his mass storages built and then decided to roll for Loyalists coming out onto the field. So, superior speed versus that brute damage and staying power on the brick. Definitely opted for the mobility on Ajax. That is going to be one up on the front with 3 more following and more in production. You'll also see that he has paused several of his T2 support factories in order to get more Loyalists out more quickly. No T3 so far scheduled for Keyser. Though to be honest, I don't know that Keyser has the income for it. He has closed the gap quite a bit on income. He's only close, he's only double, not triple. Ajax versus Keyser on income. Let me go ahead and click in and check on those reclaim numbers. 27K versus, as we get a freeze frame here. Oh dear. That probably means that the game has ended 5 minutes into the future and we may have lost the live replay, which will be an unfortunate circumstance, but we'll stick it out for just a minute here and see if it unfreezes. There it is. Ajax is 16K reclaim. So Keyser has actually widened his gap on income through reclaim, but that is still not a substantial enough amount to make up for how big of a difference this is. Well, that was either a disconnect or a death, and it may actually be lag because that's the second time it stuttered. So perhaps the game has not actually ended. We're going to take a look on the south. This is going to be a very nice push here. Totally abandoning the northern edge, anticipating that Keyser will retract all of his units in an effort to stave off this push. And that is definitely a wager that is going to pay off. Looks like there's 2 hoplites that are moving in on the north side, but those will be easily defended against by the ACU and a couple of units over on that edge. Keyser trying to edge in, get in firing range without exposing himself, keep the hoplites behind that front line defense. And now he is divided. Ajax is going to dive on the south side, pinching those hoplites against the mountains so that they cannot kite out as effectively as they need to, and drawing in the smaller group of units from the north to die under Medusa fire. That is going to be a huge hit to Keyser's unit potential. In fact, I think total oblivion awaits Keyser's forces on this. And then we've got a little bit of a counter move to the north, but I think it is going to be too little too late for Ajax. He is pausing all of his factories. Oh dear. Is that the direction we're going? Ah, it will do no good. The tack launchers are not close enough to anything to actually get the job done. So, he is pausing all of his things for no good reason, I feel. 34 mass to the positive. Maybe he has just decided to take his beating. No, he's turned something back on. Is he trying to go for a T3 mass extractor in his base, or just the ecoing? I think he's just going for the ecoing. The T3 push he's decided is the only way to keep himself alive. Ajax placing another T2 power generator. That brings him up to 4 for a monumental amount of power generation. And it looks like he's got, yes, a T3 support factory on the front line, increasing the amount that he can build. And he's also turned back on one of his T2 support factories to build probably stealth and flak or some mix of support units for his forces. Ajax is being extremely careful right now, and I'm not entirely sure why, unless he's strictly trying not to leave any mass on Keezer's doorstep, because Keezer's been able to survive so long basically only because he has had that income from Reclaim. So it's odd to see someone pulling their punches essentially so hard, but at the same time, if you're not sure that you have the forces to kill him, you might not want to try to poke and prod with combat units. At this point, Ajax, I think, has decided to go the relaxing route. He does not have fresh intel, doesn't really know what Keezer has, just knows that he has more map control. And he has T1 air scouts, I think, that he's sitting on. No, he does not, actually. Yeah, he does. He has one right there. So if he were to go and scout, he would probably find a very juicy target indeed to move his forces into. But as things are standing, he's just sitting in easy response time next to his radar range and stacking up T3 units. Keezer throwing out the GG and the Control K. So that is going to be all she wrote. That was a strangely stagnant game towards the end there. I'm wondering if Ajax was just relaxing, or I don't know what the hell was going on with that. But a very odd one indeed. Well played to Ajax. That was just a solidly executed game. There weren't any real errors. There weren't any lapses in judgment. There weren't any pointlessly lost units. He just played slowly, carefully, adequately, and Keezer slipped up 2 or 3 times. And it wasn't much. It wasn't a whole lot of a difference. But over time, those little mistakes, not having enough air, sacrificing air, not having any flak in the land forces initially, losing a bunch of hoplites to bombers, going over committing to hoplites in general, I feel like. It was an odd game, but one where you definitely see 2 people who are extremely good at FAF, both of them with very precise build orders and unique playstyles, coming head to head, and slowly but surely one of them grinding the other into oblivion. Well freaking played. That is gonna wrap everything up for this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, feel free to drop a like and share it with someone. If you want to support the channel, catch the streams, or join the Discord, check out the links in the description. Thank you all for being at least partially insane, and I will see you in the next one.